The old logging cabin on Old Mill Road, nestled deep within the forgotten woods of Northern California, was supposed to be the perfect base for a week of hiking and reconnection for 4 college friends: Chris, Ashley, Daniel, and Megan. But as they drove down the winding, unpaved road, the towering pines and redwoods seemed to close in, their branches forming a suffocating canopy that swallowed the sunlight. The air, thick with the scent of pine needles and damp earth, held a peculiar, unnerving silence. No birds sang, no insects buzzed. It was a stillness so profound it felt unnatural, as if the forest itself was holding its breath, watching their every move. The cabin itself was rustic, but felt oddly cold, despite the summer warmth. As they unpacked, Chris noticed something strange, intricate, almost tribal-looking carvings etched into the bark of the trees surrounding the cabin. They depicted stick figures with elongated limbs, their heads featureless, their bodies twisted into unnatural poses. "Creepy," Ashley muttered, tracing one with her finger. "Looks like something out of a horror movie," Daniel scoffed. "Probably some local kids trying to be edgy." But Megan, usually the most outgoing, was quiet, her eyes scanning the dense woods. With a growing unease, their first hike was unsettling. The silence of the forest was absolute, broken only by their own footsteps and the crunch of pine needles. They kept hearing faint, almost imperceptible sounds from deep within the trees. A rustle, a snap of a twig, always just beyond their sight. It felt like they were being followed, their every move tracked by unseen eyes. Chris, usually fearless, found himself constantly glancing over his shoulder, a prickle of unease tracing its way down his spine. That evening, back at the cabin, they discovered a backpack missing. Daniel's. They searched everywhere, but it was gone. "Did you leave it outside?" Ashley asked, her voice tinged with frustration. Daniel swore he hadn't. As they argued, a faint, distorted whisper seemed to drift from the woods, mimicking Daniel's voice, calling his name. It was chillingly accurate, yet utterly devoid of warmth or life. They froze, staring at each other, the blood draining from their faces. "Did you hear that?" Megan whispered, her eyes wide with terror. It sounded like Daniel. Chris grabbed his phone, his hands trembling. "There's no signal." "Of course there isn't." He tried to rationalize it, blaming the wind, but the air was still. The forest, once a symbol of freedom, now felt like a vast predatory entity, and they were its prey. They spent the night huddled. Together, the whispers from the woods growing louder, clearer, now mimicking all their voices, calling their names, urging them to come out, to play. The carvings on the trees seemed to multiply, appearing on the cabin walls, on the porch railing, their twisted figures staring with blank, accusing faces. The silence inside the cabin was broken only by their ragged breathing and the chilling. Echoes from outside. What do they want? Ashley sobbed, burying her face in Chris's shoulder. "They're playing with us," Megan whispered, her voice hoarse. "They're mimicking us. They want us to come out." Daniel, usually the joker, was pale and silent, staring at the door as if expecting it to burst open. The air in the cabin grew impossibly cold, and the metallic sweet scent, like old sap and something else, something vaguely like ozone, was overpowering. He called his sister Lisa, his voice tight with a desperation he couldn't fully articulate. "Lisa, we're stuck. Something's out. There. It's mimicking our voices. It took Daniel's bag." The line crackled, then went dead. Chris slammed the phone down. They were truly alone. The forest was closing in, its unseen inhabitants growing bolder, their whispers turning into guttural snarls. When they thought no one was listening, the next morning, Daniel was gone. His sleeping bag was empty, the cabin door ajar. They searched frantically, calling his name, but only the mocking echoes of his own voice returned from the woods. The carvings on the trees around the cabin were now covered in fresh, dark sap, almost like dried blood, and they depicted a new figure, a twisted, elongated form, its head a blank oval, its limbs contorted, dragging something small and indistinct. Behind it, "They took him," Megan whispered, her voice flat, devoid of emotion. "They're hunting us." Chris, his mind reeling, knew she was right. The forest wasn't just silent, it was listening. It wasn't just watching, it was learning. And it wasn't just mimicking, it was luring. The summer sun, when it finally pierced, the dense canopy felt like a cruel mockery of the terror that had consumed their night dot. Only Chris and Ashley made it out of the old Mill Road woods. They were found days later, disoriented and traumatized, their clothes torn, their eyes wide and vacant. They spoke of a forest that was alive, of unseen things that mimicked human voices, luring their friends deeper into the shadows. The cabin was later found abandoned, its walls covered in strange, disturbing carvings. To this day, locals avoid Old Mill Road, whispering tales of the mimics of the redwoods. And sometimes, on quiet summer nights, when the wind rustles through the ancient trees, you can still hear it, a faint, distorted chorus of human voices, calling out from the depths of the forest, forever echoing the desperate pleas of those who ventured too deep and were never heard from again. The old Miller farm in rural Nebraska had been abandoned for decades, its fields barren, its farmhouse crumbling. So when the Smith family, fresh from bustling Chicago, bought it sight unseen for a steal, their friends called them crazy. But John Smith, a man with a vision, saw potential. He dreamed of organic corn, a bountiful harvest. And that summer, the corn delivered. It grew impossibly fast, stalks reaching skyward, ears fat and golden, far beyond anything the local farmers had ever seen. The air around their property, usually dry and dusty, now hummed with a strange, almost electric energy, and a faint, sweet smell, like overripe fruit mixed with something else. Something vaguely metallic clung to the air. It was a miracle, a blessing. But as John walked through the towering stalks, a profound and unsettling quiet descended, broken only by a constant, rhythmic rustling that seemed to come from within the corn itself, even when there was no wind. First week was a whirlwind of unpacking and marveling at the corn's growth. But soon, the anomalies began. Their youngest, 8-year-old Emma, started talking about a man in the corn. "He watches me, Daddy," she'd whisper, her eyes wide, pointing to the swaying stalks. John and his wife, Sarah, dismissed it as a child's imagination, fueled by the vast, unfamiliar landscape. Yet, when John walked the perimeter of the field, he felt an undeniable sense of being observed, a prickle on the back of his neck that made him quicken his pace. The corn continued its unnatural growth, taller than any man, forming an impenetrable labyrinth. The rustling sound became a constant companion, a low, rhythmic whisper that seemed to vibrate through the very air. Sarah started complaining of headaches, a dull throb behind her eyes that never seemed to go away. She also noticed strange, earthy stains on Emma's clothes, even when she hadn't been playing in the dirt. "It's just the farm life, dear," John would say, but a knot of unease was beginning to tighten in his own stomach. One afternoon, John found a new scarecrow in the middle of their field. It wasn't one they had put up. It was crudely made with rough burlap for a head and straw for limbs, but its eyes, two dark, polished stones, seemed to stare directly at the farmhouse. He walked towards it, a chill running down his spine despite the scorching sun. As he approached, a faint, almost imperceptible hum emanated from the scarecrow, and the rustling of the corn around it intensified, sounding like 1,000 dry whispers. "John, did you put up another scarecrow?" Sarah asked that evening, her voice strained, because Emma said it moved. She said it was closer to the house than it was this morning. John felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. He hadn't. He tried to rationalize it, blaming the wind, but the air was still. The scarecrow, its dark eyes fixed on their home, felt like a silent, ominous guardian, and the cornfield, once a symbol of prosperity, now felt like a watchful, hungry entity. He called his brother, Robert, a seasoned farmer from Iowa, his voice tight with apprehension. "Robert, this corn, it's not right. It's too big, too fast, and there's this scarecrow." Robert listened patiently. "John, you're not used to good soil, and scarecrows are common. Don't let your imagination get the best of you." But John knew it was more than that. He could feel the field's presence, a cold, insidious energy that seemed to seep into the very air, drawing them deeper into its embrace. That night, the rustling from the cornfield intensified, a frantic, desperate sound that seemed to surround the farmhouse. Emma started screaming from her room. John rushed in to find her huddled in her bed, pointing frantically at the window. Outside, silhouetted against the moonlight, a figure stood at the edge of the cornfield. It was tall, impossibly thin, and seemed to be woven from corn stalks and burlap, its head a dark, featureless void. It wasn't the scarecrow. This was something else. "He's here, Daddy," Emma sobbed, burying her face in his chest. "The harvestman." John grabbed his shotgun, his hands trembling. He peered out the window, but the figure was gone, swallowed by the swaying corn. Yet the rustling intensified, and he could hear faint, guttural whispers emanating from the field, calling their names, urging them to come out, to join the harvest. He confronted Sarah, his voice desperate. "Sarah, we have to leave, now, this farm. It's not safe." She looked at him, her eyes wide with fear, but also with a strange resignation. "But John, the harvest, it's almost ready. Her voice was flat, emotionless, and for the first time, John felt a true bone-deep terror. The field was claiming them, one by one, not just their sanity, but their very will. As dawn approached, the cornfield seemed to press in on the farmhouse, its stalks brushing against the windows, its rustling a deafening roar. The sweet metallic smell was overpowering. John, shotgun clutched in his hand, stood guard by the door while Sarah and Emma huddled together. He heard a soft tap on the window, then another and another. He looked to see countless small, dark, polished stones, identical to the scarecrow's eyes, raining down from the corn, tapping against the glass, beckoning them out. The Smith family was never seen again. The Miller farm stood abandoned once more, its farmhouse slowly crumbling. But the cornfield remained, unnaturally green and impossibly tall, even in the dead of winter. Locals sometimes speak of a strange, rhythmic rustling that can be heard from the field, even on the stillest nights. And sometimes, if you drive by at twilight, you might glimpse them, faint, shadowy figures moving between the towering stalks, their forms vaguely human, their eyes like dark, polished stones forever, tending to the endless harvest of the harvestman's field. The old stone well stood sentinel in the overgrown backyard of the rented farmhouse, its moss-covered bricks a stark contrast to the vibrant late summer greenery of rural Vermont. For Michael and Emily, city dwellers seeking a digital detox and a taste of rustic charm, it was an enchanting relic. Local legend whispered of its power, a well that granted wishes to those brave enough to peer into its inky depths at midnight. Emily, ever the romantic, had laughed, pulling Michael closer as the cool evening air descended. Imagine, Michael, a real wishing well. What would you wish for? Michael, a pragmatist to his core, had merely smiled, but as he gazed into the vacant well's shadowed opening, a faint, almost imperceptible shimmer caught his eye, and a strange, cold breath seemed to rise from its depths, whispering a promise that felt both alluring and deeply unsettling. Their first night in the farmhouse was filled with the usual sounds of an old house settling, creaking timbers, distant animal calls. But beneath it all, Michael kept hearing a faint, rhythmic splash from the direction of the well, too regular, too deliberate to be natural, like something gently stirring the water. He dismissed it as his imagination, a trick of the unfamiliar quiet. Yet, as he drifted to sleep, he dreamt of the well, its dark mouth beckoning, and a chorus of soft, indistinguishable whispers rising from its depths, calling his name. The next morning, Emily was unusually quiet. Her eyes, usually bright, seemed distant, preoccupied. I made a wish last night, she confessed, her voice barely a whisper as they sat on the porch. Michael raised an eyebrow. Oh? And what did you wish for, my practical Emily? She shook, her head, a faint, unsettling smile playing on her lips. It's a secret, but I felt something, a pull. Michael felt a prickle of unease. He had seen her walk towards the well at midnight, but had thought nothing of it, attributing it to her whimsical nature. Now her words, and the strange light in her eyes, felt profoundly wrong. Over the next few days, the well became Emily's obsession. She spent hours by its edge, staring into its depths, sometimes whispering, sometimes just listening. Michael would call to her, and she would respond slowly, as if roused from a deep trance. He started noticing small, unsettling changes. Her reflection in the well's water seemed to linger for a moment after she moved. A faint, distorted echo. Once, he saw her talking to herself, her voice low and intimate, as if conversing with an unseen entity within the well. "Emily, what are you doing?" he asked one afternoon, finding her kneeling by the well, her hand dipped into the water. She pulled it out slowly, her fingers dripping. "It's cold, Michael. So cold, but it feels welcoming." Her eyes were wide, almost glassy. "It's telling me things I'd forgotten." Michael felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. "What things, Emily? What are you talking about?" She just smiled, a vacant, unsettling expression. "Secrets. About us, about everything." He called his sister Jessica, his voice tight with an apprehension he couldn't fully articulate. "Jessica, Emily's changed. She's obsessed with this old. Well, she's talking to it, hearing things." Jessica, ever the rational one, tried to reassure him. "Michael, she's just enjoying the quiet. It's a new environment. Give her space." But Michael knew it was more than that. He could feel the well's presence, a cold, insidious energy that seemed to seep into the very air around the farmhouse. Drawing Emily deeper into its embrace that one evening, Michael found a small antique locket, Emily's grandmother's, lying by the well's edge. He knew she always wore it. He picked it up. It was freezing cold, and as he held it, he heard a faint, almost imperceptible whisper from the well. Mine. He dropped the locket, stumbling back, his heart hammering against his ribs. This wasn't just a wishing well. It was a collector, and it was claiming things one by one. He confronted Emily, his voice desperate. "Emily, we need to leave now, this well. It's not good." She turned to him, her eyes devoid of their usual warmth, replaced by a chilling, knowing glint. "But Michael, I haven't finished my wish. Not yet." Her voice was flat, emotionless, and for the first time, Michael felt a true, bone-deep terror. He was losing her, not to a sickness, but to something ancient and malevolent that resided in the well. That night, the rhythmic splashing from the well intensified, a frantic, desperate sound. The whispers grew louder, clearer, now a chorus of voices, some childlike, some ancient, all calling Emily's name, urging her towards the well. Michael found her standing by its edge, her arms outstretched, her body swaying as if in a trance. The water in the well glowed with a faint, ethereal light, and he could see distorted, swirling shapes beneath the surface, reaching, beckoning. "Emily, no!" he screamed, rushing towards her. She turned, her face illuminated by the well's eerie glow, her eyes wide and black, reflecting the swirling abyss. "It's beautiful, Michael," she whispered, her voice no longer her own, but a chilling echo of the well's chorus. "Come, join us. Your wish awaits." The summer night, once a symbol of peace, had become a suffocating embrace of ancient horror. and the well's promise was a terrifying, inescapable lure. Michael never spoke of what happened that night. He was found days later, wandering aimlessly on a remote dirt road, his eyes wide and vacant, muttering about wishes in cold water. Emily was never seen again. The farmhouse stood empty, its windows like dark, empty eyes, and the old stone well remained silent and still. But sometimes, on quiet summer nights, when the moon hung full over Willow Creek, locals swear they can hear it, a faint rhythmic splash and a chorus of soft, indistinguishable whispers rising from the wells. Depths calling for another wish, another soul to join its cold, eternal thirst.